Since Putin's horrific invasion, over 1 million people have been killed or injured. Every single day, Russia continues to rain down hundreds of missiles and drones on Ukrainian cities. Putin's forces have massacred civilians and kidnapped thousands of Ukrainian children, bringing them back to Russian re-education camps. These atrocities led the International Criminal Court to issue an arrest warrant for Putin in 2023 as a war criminal. Further, Trump called Ukrainian President Zelensky a dictator. That's not true either. Zelensky won 75% of the vote in free elections. In fact, his approval rating is higher than Trump's. In the midst of a brutal war, Ukraine's parliament continues to function and free and unfettered political debate takes place.
Donald Trump's meeting yesterday with President Zelensky in the Oval Office was one of the darkest moments in our country's history. For the past 2 weeks, we have seen Donald Trump working himself up to this moment with subtle praise of Putin and not so subtle praise of Putin, and attacks on Zelensky all culminating with that moment. And Democrats have immediately snapped into action, as they should, in calling him out. But no one has done a better job doing so than Bernie Sanders, who went off on Donald Trump and went public with one of the worst aspects of what he did yesterday. We're going to get into it all and check out that interview. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me. Now let's check out this full and incredibly impactful interview from Bernie Sanders.
Thanks, everybody, for joining me to discuss a very, very serious issue. Yesterday, we witnessed an extremely sad moment in American history. We saw the President of the United States aligning himself with the dictator of Russia, Vladimir Putin, to undermine the independence of Ukraine and its democracy. Let's be clear. Trump is showing us that he sees one of the world's most brutal dictators as his friend, and our longtime democratic allies in Europe as his enemies. He wants a world that is safe for authoritarians and oligarchs, but extremely dangerous for democracies. It will not surprise you when I tell you that Trump is lying, as he so often does. Yesterday, Trump said that Ukraine started the war. That's not true. Russia invaded Ukraine twice, first in 2014 and then again in 2022. Right now, Russia occupies about 20% of Ukraine. Since Putin's horrific invasion, over 1 million people have been killed or injured. Every single day, Russia continues to rain down hundreds of missiles and drones on Ukrainian cities. Putin's forces have massacred civilians and kidnapped thousands of Ukrainian children, bringing them back to Russian re-education camps. These atrocities led the International Criminal Court to issue an arrest warrant for Putin in 2023 as a war criminal. Further, Trump called Ukrainian President Zelensky a dictator. That's not true either. Zelensky won 75% of the vote in free elections. In fact, his approval rating is higher than Trump's. In the midst of a brutal war, Ukraine's parliament continues to function and free and unfettered political debate takes place. Trump claimed that our European allies have done little to support Ukraine in its fight against Putin's invasion. He said the United States has contributed 3 times more than Europe. But that's another lie. In fact, Europe has provided more aid to Ukraine than the United States. But it's not just that Trump is lying again. That's not new. It's what this all reveals about where he wants to take our country, and in fact, the entire world. Trump is cozying up to Vladimir Putin. So who is Putin? And what kind of world does he want to build? Putin is a dictator who crushed Russia's movement toward democracy after the end of the Cold War. Russia holds sham elections every 6 years where Putin wins 90% of the vote, and authorities don't even try to hide their ballot stuffing. There is no freedom of speech or free media in Putin's Russia. Protests are violently suppressed. Tens of thousands of people are imprisoned for protesting Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Political dissidents are harassed or thrown into jail. The bravest, people like Alexei Navalny, are killed outright. Hundreds of thousands of Russians have fled Putin's brutal regime since his invasion of Ukraine. But Putin has maintained control in his country by offering Russia's oligarchs a simple deal. If you give me absolute power, I'll let you steal as much as you want from the Russian people. And that's why in a country where many are struggling economically, Russian oligarchs have stashed trillions of dollars in offshore tax accounts. That is the Russian leader that Trump admires. That is the Russian oligarchy that he supports. But that is not the perspective of the American people. We know, and we are proud of, the fact that the United States of America is the longest standing democracy in the world. We know that many hundreds of thousands of brave Americans over the years have fought and died to defend democracy. We also know that our allies in the world are those countries that believe in democracy, not authoritarianism. In this critical moment in our history, I hope that every American, regardless of political perspective, will stand tall and say yes to democracy, no to oligarchy, and no to authoritarianism. Thank you very much.
We saw Senator Bernie Sanders also put out a direct-to-camera video about 2 weeks ago that I've used a couple times on the channel just because I think it is so important about what a sad day it was the first time Donald Trump was clearly on the track to abandon our ally in Ukraine, and how far we have fallen from there is shocking. Or maybe it shouldn't, but it certainly is disgraceful. And Bernie's words are so incredibly important at this time. But like I said, there were several Democrats who came out against Donald Trump and thankfully are getting attention in doing so. So we need to give more to that with this clip from Cory Booker right here.
Well, on that point, we have seen, for example, Senator Roger Wicker speak pointedly about Vladimir Putin and speak pointedly in defense of Ukraine. We saw him meet this morning with Volodymyr Zelensky and post a tweet of him shaking his hand and talking about how much he supports him, saying how much he was there to support him. He just quietly took that down after what happened today in the Oval Office. We saw Lindsey Graham go from meeting with Zelensky this morning and praising him and talking about his support for him to demanding his resignation as soon as Vance and Trump put on that display today. We saw Marco Rubio, who is until recently considered to be sort of a realpolitik Republican on foreign policy issues in the United States Senate. He sat there inert in the Oval Office today, saying nothing. Looking green, and then put out a boilerplate North Korea-style tweet of praise for Donald Trump as soon as it was done. What do you make about hope for Republicans showing any sort of resistance here? Is there any?
You know, again, this is a shift in our politics, that the Senate used to be a place where right or wrong, people would criticize a president when they stepped out of line, even one of their own party. And here is a situation that is so grave, and my colleagues know this because we meet with these leaders. I was in communication today with an Estonian leader. This has struck fear in their country because Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Moldova, these countries know the threat of Russia and worry because Putin is using the same rhetoric with them he used about the Ukrainian people. This has grand implications beyond just Ukraine. And we know our history, but yet are failing to learn from it. If there's ever a time for political courage, even if it means undermining one's ability to get reelected, this is a time for courage. And we know from our history, when good men do nothing, that is the ingredient that is necessary for evil to be triumphant.
Every Democrat needs to be using this moment to highlight that Donald Trump is willing to throw our enemies under the bus to make a mockery of our alliances abroad and put them in real danger because a dictator bats their eyes at Donald Trump. Now, I know that support for Ukraine might not be the most popular thing with a lot of voters, but what Donald Trump did yesterday was a disgusting display and reveals just how unequipped he is to do anything but be angry. That's what it's about. Yesterday did not make your eggs cheaper. It did not make your rent cost less. And it is not going to build you a better life. It is just Donald Trump abandoning our allies. We got to make that clear. We're going to call it out every single day. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around at the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.